Hey, thank you all for joining and whoever may watch this in the near future. So this is more or less a tutorial educational Q&A session that we are having here. We'll go over some of the basics of GPMS, keeping it rather simple, and we'll begin with the creation of money. You know, how it was created before. But before, I'd love for Lee to just shorten how it was created before, if you will. Can I put you on the spot right at this moment, Lee? Or
Yeah,
you're
why
always
not?
ready, brother? Okay, how was it created before? But we'll keep it simple, you know?
That's what I'm just that's the spot you got me on, is to keep that simple.
Yeah, I
Let's
know
just,
what you mean.
let's just make this really, really easy and say that money was basically, or credit funding was basically created on the back of the belief that, well, actually on the back of the obfuscation, they actually take our credit, the wealth of the individuals on the plane, and make funding behind that, and then give us it back. So effectively, you've got certifications, birth certifications, you've got derivatives, you've got shares, stocks, and all of these different things, bonds, government bonds, and all the rest of it, that are bonded to the actual private, well, the public person, the persona that's created inside the corporate structure to create funds. And they create them just by adding zeros and credit lines through autographs and agreements, AG and AU, which is the gold and silver, which I do love that part. But anyway, the agreements are made in these upper banking echelons, and they just create numbers. There's no debit, there's no debt. There never was debt. That never existed. It was a figment, it's a fiction. With this funding that they've created, then they create a debt on the back of it. So the governments create the debt and the banks create the debt. There was no debt. There was nothing backing the money. They removed all backing and just created money from thin air. So this is what we believe in. We believe that that money is owed to somebody. It's somebody's given it to somebody. You've borrowed it off somebody. That never was the case. They created credit and gave you that and told you it was debt. So they got it from nowhere, nothing, and gave it to you and told you you owed them something, and we believed it. So all money creation was through the belief that it was theirs to give to us. It was ours that they took and gave it back and told us we owed it them. This is kind of the simple way of looking at it, dead easy. You can look down into a lot more deeper. Is that enough, brother? Or I don't want to go too deep into this. I just want to keep it really simple. But money created through credit, by the belief that the people's belief that it was already theirs. The banks, it wasn't. They created it on our backs, then created credit, created debt on the back of that, and we pay the debt.
So actually, if I may,
yeah.
Actually, so, you know, the governments and the banks in collusion, they are one item. They are one entity, all connected. So they created money, and then what they did is made all of humanity dependent upon their money, what they created. So what we are doing, so through all of their different ways that they did it and complicated it, but we know the end result of their creation of money, and because of their wealth disparity and their unequal distribution of their money, and to the selective ones which they would give the most, and, you know, to the others make them work for it, and all of these other games. But the thing is, it's their money. It's what they created. And they created the illusion for the people that you needed to use their money in their way, so that you needed a physical or resource asset-backed currency, which is all fiction. So all they do is they go with their fingers, type some numbers into the bank account, then they draw up these false attachments that says it's backed by gold or assets, which it is not. For when you were to go and evaluate and value everything around the planet, you can easily see that the amount of money that was created is not supported by any material asset backing. So having said this, that is the way they do it. And they deprive ones of money, of food, because they created that dependency. So they create death because of poverty and sickness. The sickness is due by stress from what they created by depriving ones of money, putting them in lack, but also keeping them in the past dependent upon that money. So to go to the flip side with GPMS and to keep it simple, what we do as the majority of the people chooses to do this. So this is a worldwide referendum. What is occurring with GPMS? Collecting the voice. So a referendum, a vote, a choice. So this is the way to present it. So at this stage, we are in phase 1 of GPMS at creating the majority voice worldwide that says one of the things we wish to create money from our intrinsic value. We decide that we don't need any resource backing. We are the value ourselves because we are the creators, and we can responsibly and prudently and with discipline print numbers into the existing financial system that instantly creates money the same way they do. However, with GPMS, what we do is put this into the existing systems that we take ownership of, and we disperse this money equally. But what occurs very quickly, humanity becomes to realize they don't need money at all. And then that illusion of requiring a method of exchange is let go of, and humanity advances forward out of the requirement of needing money as part of a societal structure. Do you wish to fill in a couple gaps there, Lee, if there was any?
Not on that, just on the, well, we'll move into the other parts of this as we bring into the law and legality and that sort of stuff. So no, it's fine. That's nice. That's nice and outline, Rick. Anyway, that's nice and outline, brother. For now, it's just replacing what one creation of money with another. One was nefarious, malevolent. The other one's benevolent and abundant. It's that straightforward.
Yeah. So we flipped the tables on the old, if you will. So the 1% over here made their money and created it, and made this 99% dependent upon it. So what we have done is we flipped the tables. We gather the 99% together and say we are creating the money, and we are creating it our way, and that your 1% no longer serves anyone, and it drops. You do not see it any longer. And everyone knows the majority of the people upon the planet are in their heart only want to have comfort, peaceful living, and not to be able to always be in a state of survival. And it's absolutely ridiculous that humanity ever got to this form of savagery. So we are breaking all of that. We are gathering the voice. The 90% of humanity upon the planet are good of their heart. They will choose this. It is imminent. The timing of it just cannot be determined. However, all of the points are showing that it has begun to collect this voice, and it is inevitable and it is imminent, because not only is this choice a common sense choice, it is most logical, and it is also the divine plan for humanity. So nothing prevents this. And I believe there was perhaps a question just when we began to speak. Someone was going to ask something.
No, okay. I'll just jump in then on the other side of that with regards to, we get questions about how are you going to do it, what you're going to do, create another bank and create another method of exchange and these sort of things, what currency. And The simple answer is that the system is in place as it stands, and the system's creating money at will for those that are in charge of it. Well, the system was built by and for the people. We're in charge of it. It's just being abused. So we go and get the keys back when there's enough of us and say, that'll do. You've had your chance. You've had your job. Now we'll have a go. And do exactly the same, but for everybody instead of for the few. It is just that straightforward. We can add a load of complexity to it if we feel, but why? Thank you. Bye-bye. Our turn. It's all it is. All it needs to be looked at.
Indeed, yeah. So again, all of the infrastructure to do GPMS is here right now. It can be done in 2 days if the people were in power. So we are getting the people in power by collecting the voice to do this. And your existing financial infrastructure, once the people own this, and this is where we're getting into the next important point, when the majority of the people upon the planet decides to publicly take the rightful ownership of all of the infrastructure upon the planet, and it is shared within this majority voice, nothing also can stop that. But the ownership of the worldwide internet and financial system, which is each in the same, and also the administration councils or committees by the people. So they are all created as we create the voice. These are also formed, so we don't need to complicate things. But what we do need to do, which will be done when enough of humanity agrees that yes, they all contributed to anything and everything ever built upon the planet. They put time, sweat, tears, if you will, and their hours and part of their life into building it. So that is a rightful, also technical ownership, if you will, and everyone owns it. And a beautiful example that they even tell you that you're an owner of it is in the U.S. As soon as a child is born, they are responsible for their old illusionary debt of about $67,000. So they're showing you as soon as a child is born that if a child is to own some fictitious debt, that means that they are also at that very moment a shareholder of the entire infrastructure of the planet. So that's just one example that this is so. But as Lee said, all debt is fictitious. They created the debt. They created the word debt in that concept to keep control over you. In reality, debt does not exist. These are the money makers that they create money to infinity for themselves. So they have really two sets of books. They have one set of books for themselves, their unlimited cash accounts, where they just keep creating money and live their lavish lifestyles, if you will. And then there's their other set of books that they give to the public. Oh, you're in debt. You're in debt. And one of the most funny things as well, when you calculate the worldwide debt, which is perhaps gazillions of dollars, like who do they owe it to? This is one of the most funniest memes, but it's the most logical and sensical meme. How can a planet owe gazillions of dollars? Who do they owe it to? The concept is absolutely nonsensical and ridiculous. So we're breaking all of the illusions down, and during this awakening, as more become aligned, they need to see the old system didn't work, and this is what's divinely happening. They're seeing all of the restrictions with it and everything, why they will not want it, and this makes it easier to make the most logical, definite choice of GPMS going forward.
Just to add to that, I'm going to put a little bit in about corporate structures. So The whole thing's run as a business, as a corporation. So when Rick was just saying about the debt is given to the public, it's given to the public through the government of the country. When the government was funded, the government had no debt. The government's got infinite credit because it's part of the bank, and the bank can create infinite money. So where's the debt come from? Again, we can look at a lot of these different things, and a lot of this information is coming out. Even I was thinking last night about how many billionaires were there in 1900. Billionaires, I don't know, maybe one or two. How much money has increased over the last 100 years? How much is it floating around out there? Now we've got trillionaires and this sort of thing. Well, 1,000 billion. How many of these? So America owes something like 120 trillion. Owes 120 trillion. Like Rick's saying, who to? Where did this come from? How did money increase that much from the 1900s to now? Oh, inflation and all of these things, absolute rubbish. None of it exists. It's just creation to create poverty, oppression, suppression, while others can enjoy the elitism that the space they created for themselves. Without going into too much detail on that and too much depth on that, that's just where we are. So all this does is says, you've had your go, as I've said. Keep going then, Rick. I'm not going to go into corporate structures and Admiralty law and all this sort of stuff because we don't need to educate on that per se. Other people can find that out themselves. But nevertheless, this is where we are. So away we go.
Yeah, and so we don't need all of the ridiculous, complicated, stringent structure because it was all devised to control humanity and suppress humanity, and yes, keeping humanity as the slaves for the small 1%. So, but what we're doing is the 99%, the people, outnumber that old 1%. And again, within this voice, as you create it of the people, is all of the skill sets, all of the knowledge, all of the know-how to run a simple society, a simple, very rapid transitional society for humanity by using money as the good tool, and then they transition out of not needing it at all, as I mentioned earlier. But what you collect within this skill set, once the ones awaken and join the voice, is you have everything that you need, all of the templates for the restoration of the planet, if you will, like growing food and cleaning up not only the toxins within the planet, but within the body. So everything is all there because everyone's been prepared in this voice. So you have all of the new healing and healing modalities and techniques. You have all of the permaculture structure. You have all of the know-how has already been integrated into the timelines. So it's only a matter of uniting all of this together. So we have everything. So you don't need to complicate, oh, how is GPMS going to do this or do that? The ones within the voice and the volunteers that are in this huge voice has all of the solutions, all of the skill sets. So with GPMS, right at this time, our main function is just getting ones to look this way and to see the simplicity, the logic, and the common sense of it. They don't, even though it is a full divine plan, they don't even know that, need to know that to make the choice. The choice is most obvious and simple once they can look at that they have a choice. And when you do this, what I strongly suggest is our comparison chart, old versus new, on the website. And that makes it easier for anyone to choose that they wish to vote, agree, or as Lee was saying, give their accord to, this new world. But we need to collect the voice. It's so important. Every voice counts because it creates a tangible material number that everyone can see that this is definite, that it is serious, and that it's not an illusion, that it is an actual thing. And when all join together to create this, and you have this definite number of collection of votes, it cannot be ignored, it cannot be denounced, it cannot be opposed by any old existing nefarious structure, if they're even here at this time once we reach a point. Because for everything that GPMS contains, it is totally and absolutely all conclusive, and it is the most humane and simple thing.
The we're in phase one. We're doing the phase one, like Rick has been saying, is very important. Gather the voice, but we're actually in talks now about phase two as well. We're actually putting some of the nuts and bolts together. We've got different factions that are actually aligning up with different ideas. Lots of people are asking about how are you going to do it, but mechanics of this and the nuts and bolts. And we're in phase one to create the voice, to create the mechanics and the nuts and bolts. Yes, we're talking to people about this and they're aligning their different ideas, but most of these are breakaway fixes, remedial fixes within the existing structure. They don't take the whole structure, which is what GPMS does. So some are aligning already, realizing that when GPMS comes to fruition, that their instruments can be utilized in that. Inside that, what they're realizing is that they have their instrument needs to work with another. So their instrument is not the instrument; it's part of the solution. So again, this ego thing, this is mine and this is the only way, is being released slowly. So we're actually I'm finding a little bit of this. Rick's probably finding a little bit of this. It's happening now. So we're getting to the point where people are coming up with the sustainability, the policies, and the bits and pieces for the administration of this to get it in. But that's not what's important. What's important is the people choosing the old or the new. And that's where we are. So this is the most important part, and this is the phase that we're in. I get why everybody's saying, how do we do it? What's the nuts and bolts? If you don't tell me that, I'm not going to get involved. Well, it's openly says on the website, create the voice and then inception. So we're in that point of creating the voice, and with that voice, as Rick has iterated, comes the solutions. And they are starting to appear. We have still got X amount of different solutions that are running off in different ways because they are, but they will align. And again, these nuts and bolts and unity and this connection and this release of it has to be this way, and that working together to say what's the best way is coming together.
Exactly, and thank you, Lee. And also, as Lee is elaborating upon what we've been experiencing also, is that the higher consciousness ingenuity is also contained with others that have been working on separate projects. However, again, as Lee is saying, these separate projects are also the mechanics, what makes the full-fledged GPMS work for all of humanity. So unbeknownst, but most gratifying to us, we have at least began a little bit of talks with one of these groups that has been working, on the mechanics for the GPMS and supplying the solution, what would you call it, framework, how it all can work so easily. So again, as higher consciousness leaders in the least, what we are, and more are becoming higher consciousness leaders every day as they keep going on the awakening curve. Having said that, we are all here to do this, but it's this unity that is taking a little bit longer than anticipated to do. However, it is imminent. It is just the timing of this. And one of the reasons for that, as we said, there are events with individuals, they can go off on tangents trying to make something work on their own, but what they're finding, it will not. And it cannot work on their own. It takes the worldwide unity for it. So it's being assured in two ways: in a human way, that they hit the resistance to see that there is an actual opposing force against them, but they need to get in line with the force in the voice where nothing can oppose it. So again, it takes this unity that is the dominant creator of this reality.
Just to jump in a little bit more to the creational aspect of what GPMS purports is, states simply, is that material backing for any future funding that went from GPMS inception is not required because the backing is in the individual. So where the wealth was, we believe the wealth, and the wealth was created off the populace prior, exactly the same now, but the backing is going to be the individual. So your wealth, my wealth, et cetera, we're going to choose to create wealth ourselves, or unlimited funding ourselves, as Rick said, prudently and with benevolence in mind. So it's not one, it's everyone equal. And this is where sovereignty comes in. So GPMS is pushing this, well, not pushing, is going to bring in sovereignty as a base level. So everybody becomes sovereign. Sovereign by definition means above authority. So these authorities were fake. We have unalienable rights when we're born here, that we are sovereign, which means above authority, yet the authorities tell us that we're below them. And this this is all a little bit, I use the analogy of a pirate ship. This is pirates. This is legal corporate piracy, or corporate piracy being made legal through the legal structures. And that's what they've done. The pirates became the authorities. And we've just accepted piracy as authority, and sovereignty comes back in. So the GPMS instrument has the divine simplified law too. It's not just that governments are fake authorities and basically boards of directors of corporate structures owned by somebody else, not for the people, at profit from the people. But these things are unnecessary, and they're actually abhorrent, and that's what's caused the majority of the disparity. They're there to suppress, not help. So these things are no good for anybody. GPMS states simply that we'll take the keys back and put administrations will step in there to administer to the people. These administrations, higher consciousness, they're already there, the guys that walk straight into these positions and start running them benevolently. None of this is difficult. Yes, we can go into, again, complexity, but we don't need to. The same with all the enforcement structures and all this legal stuff and regulation, and you can't do this, you can't do that. Legality is below common law. Common law isn't great. Constitutional law isn't great. It all got obfuscated or undermined by legality. So GPMS puts in divine law, which is where everybody was born to until it was removed and dropped down to this corporate piracy. So again, all of these layers and all of this regulation, all these stipulations, and you can't do this, you can't do that. We choose that, gone. We choose what we do. We are our own authority. We don't need somebody to tell us we can't do this, that, and the other. We can do that. So again, this is that sovereign level coming back in, where we choose to change the environment that the experience is played out in. And there's where we are again. There's a nice little choice. It doesn't, you can look at it from many, many different aspects, but nevertheless, old, new. And it's a vote. There is no contract. There's nothing like this. It's just a vote. Old way, or this way, or let's have a go ourselves. However you want to see this. There's so many different perspectives on this.
Exactly. And, this is very simply how GPMS also offers the full peace and no crime upon the planet. In reality, the restriction and control of money is what caused disharmony and crime and depression and sickness and all of this, which keeps emanating into crimes. So when you give and we place everyone in a place of comfort, that they don't need to fight to survive, that they don't need to struggle, then all crime is eliminated as well in disharmony. So it is a product. It is peace and harmony is a direct product of gathering all of those of like-minded and of good heart in one place. Then the rest simply follow, or if they don't follow, they're not part of the whole of humanity in the society. they could become a recluse somewhere on an island. It doesn't matter, but it works out organically, I believe would be your word, Lee.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
it does, it establishes the full peace and within the individual, and so it's the
What then?
most humane thing. Again,
What tends to happen is that then we start to think about, well, what about those few that go out and steal? What about those few that will be greedy, or those few that are hoard? And all I say to that is simply put, we're talking to a very, very small amount of people, and we've seen most of these on the television. How much does it benefit? What's the percentage of the benefit versus the percentage you can think that may abuse it? And how long would that last for? So again, GPMS looks for inclusivity, all beliefs, religions, and everything else, whatever you want to think. It doesn't make any difference. And inclusively looks to bring everybody up to parity. So there is no disparity. There is no, you can't do this, you can't do that. It just levels the playing field because we choose it. The beauty is as well, GPMS doesn't put people into a position of comfort. We do. Everybody does. They choose to. And then it comes to inception. Again, none of this should be difficult to see and envision unless you want to put complexity in. And then by all means do. But don't use that complexity that you're trying to find as a reason why the old's better than the new. Because we haven't, in my mind anyway, we haven't got long left to make this choice. What do you say, brother?
yeah, well, I say it's totally evident out there when you look at the amount of unrest upon the planet, entirely worldwide, the civil unrest that is, you can see that, and that is a strong indicator of, how things are changing. And again, let's say a lot of them at the level don't know why they're fighting, but they know they need to. But at the same time that they're doing this fighting, we need to slip in front of their face, GPMS, hey, keep your opposition, if you will, for now. But if you unite, and put your voice down here as well, this is the simplest, quickest way to get it done. There's been revolution for millennium against, let's say, the old powers. It was never really, truly liberating and successful. And the reason why is because it was within countries. It was controlled and kept separated. So this time, this unprecedented thing upon the planet is to collect the worldwide voice. All borders come down, and you have the worldwide unity that gets it done once and for all. But it's happening. You're seeing it, the amount of numbers that you're seeing in your streets, let's say worldwide, if you added up all of the protesters and it came to 1 billion, one thing everyone needs to realize is that is only the tip of the iceberg of how many's awakened. So if there's about approximately 8 billion upon the planet, and if 1 billion is in the street, and it's only the tip of the iceberg, it means well over the majority of the planet is awakened and aware, at least to the level for this change. And with GPMS, again, that's why it's so logic on the comparison page that they don't even need to be awake to make this choice, but they need to see the numbers. So it's important. The more numbers we get, the more of an attraction it also becomes to them. So this is why our focus and our intent, just keep on collecting the numbers, the voice, to whatever way. But you don't need to stress on it as well. Follow your prompts and your divine feelings with it. But your material confirmations are there. The children.
No, I wasn't where I was going to go. I'm just trying to remember where I was going to go. Work. So one of the another question that's come up is about sustainability and social policy and economic policies and all of these things. Well, again, just from my perspective, or from a perspective, because we've only got perspectives until we get the voice and everybody comes together. So when the legal structures have been dismantled because we realize that they're absolutely nefarious, there's an awful lot of superfluous, fluffy jobs that have been made to keep people on the hamster wheels. There's an awful lot of useless jobs that we don't need. There won't be a lot of areas like legalities and all of these accountancy and economics, commercial specialists. All of those areas will now be defunct. We don't need them when there's no scarcity. And there was no scarcity ever. There has been no scarcity ever for anything. Scarcity is another fictitious model that was created to create profit and to create misery and disparity. Again, who owns all of the resource lines? Who owns all the shipping? Who owns all of everything? So again, the same people running the same things, creating these fictitious scarcity and fictitious lack narratives that we believed until we can see the bigger picture and see that it's all lies. So when we're looking at the new structures, people are saying, well, everybody will just quit work. Well, we don't need very many to work because there's a huge workforce that suddenly appears because half the jobs that were created weren't necessary. They were just to keep the system chugging along. So these people then turn up. The GPMS model says something about 20 to maybe 40 hours a month initially would be the requirement for each. Well, that may be 10 because with that amount of people, and once you start to allow automation, you stop the people having to work the slave jobs because the old controllers wanted that. You release the mechanism for scarcity, so now you've got abundance in all the resources from everywhere because you don't need to make profit and loss. All of a sudden, the whole system looks a lot simpler. So all of these complex policies that people are working on and all the rest of it, great in the old system and great as a form of working your way through it. Proof of concepts, if you like, but they're not necessary. We can just simplify all of them down to what works, easiest, simplest, and cannot loop back or be manipulated back. So the fundamental outline, the boundary of the instrument allows for all of that organic creation through unity, through collaboration, different cultures, societal needs, it doesn't matter. All come together to talk and to create the best that we can create at that moment that's constantly upgraded for everyone. And again, this is how easy it can be. We can put complexity in, but it's unnecessary at this point. So again, just think about those little things, adding in a lot of other individual, a lot of manpower, a lot of automation, automatons, automation, and release of suppressed technologies. We know they're out there. We know there's plenty out there. Again, this progresses things very, very quickly forward, past the point of the complexity that we can feel at the moment. So once you add in all of this, then all of a sudden the policies and the sustainability becomes less of a problem, relatively.
Exactly. Thank you, Lee. And with that, for growing food for humanity, combined with the new technology to assist in growing food, and of course the old cultivation and harvesting ways, right at this time, not even including the high technological ways of growing food, the planet is able right at this point to produce 10 times more the amount of food that is required for the present population upon the planet. So this adds to, as what Lee is saying, there is no scarcity, and this is a myth that they wish for you to believe, but they also wish they created in areas as well to deprive ones again. But also getting back to the essential jobs, what is actually needed for the society. So what we're doing with GPMS, it wipes out any reason for profit. It wipes out the capitalism. So with doing that, because it becomes one people's money that the people own and share comfortably, because of that, you do not need the financial sector like it was. And the financial industry upon the planet, and anyone can correct me if I'm mistaken, but that is the biggest employer upon the planet. So when you no longer need any of that trading and profit and gain in investments and all of the markets, what you just did is you freed up the most biggest workforce upon the planet. But when you mix them in with the essential workers, this is why your hours drop, that you don't need to do very much. Now, when you take the government jobs on top of this, which is not financial, but you take their stringent administrative bureaucracies and all of this with fees, registrations, none of this is required. So you don't need these governmental jobs as well. So now you just got another big chunk of the workforce that can come and assist with the essentials. And then when you take out part of that government jobs is also the militaries, which is one of the biggest employers worldwide, which is through the government. But when you no longer need militaries because there is no separate countries, it's a worldwide community, you just have a whole lot more personnel. So you can see how simply that you only need to work a few hours a month. And, you know, by even human nature right now, humans will tend to be bored at times, so they want to do something. So, you know, they'll be contributing with the essentials and doing what they feel to do. So they're not pressured or obligated to do a job that they hate. You know, they'll be so happy to contribute to such a free life. So the beauty is in this as well. And also what it unlocks with this workforce as well, once the people have their rightful ownership of the infrastructure upon the planet, you know, to assist with building your technology and advancing the robotics to assist with humanoid jobs. You know, you just put some of your workforce, if they wish, to go there into some of the manufacturing industries, and let's say mainly China, which is you know, notorious for having perhaps the biggest manufacturing capacity upon the planet. And very quickly, you know, what you do is you build the robotics first that build the robotics for you. So then you're freeing up a lot more of humanity, and you can use these to put in your fields, you know, to plant. And so you can see where you're being fully liberated, but just so quickly it occurs, and it's totally possible, plausible, and also imminent with that.
I'm going to take the word workforce and throw that into the bin as well, alongside economics, wealth, and all of these old commerce, and yeah, call it a do what you enjoy force.
Yeah, that's what it'll be. Yeah.
And then we can bring the children in. So we've elaborated a little bit on the money, the creation of money. We haven't picked it down to numbers yet, but GPMS openly stipulates this from 10, 11 months ago, 12,000 of the highest dollars up front and 6,000 per person, 6,000 per soul, man, woman, and child going forward then. And that opens up transitionally. This is just a keeper. So it opens up like this, but then that's for children as well. So this is from the day you're born. This is where you create your own money that way too. And the children all get a choice. So we've elaborated slightly on the workforce, the do what you enjoy force, and the time that will come down. So all of a sudden now your children have got the choice of not to have to worry about money and not to have to work like a slave for 50 years to get a tiny pension possibly and scrimp and scrape all the way through. None of that doesn't exist anymore. So now they can choose what they do when they do it, and there's no pressure on any of it because now it's do what you enjoy. And people won't work together. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. And it will happen so quickly. And to progress this forward so quickly, once the old pressure is removed, it's only that keeps the complexity and the fear. It's all that old stuff. Once we move past that, there's none of it left. Now it's just excitement. Now it's just what can we do and when can we do it and how quickly we get it done. And that's when people come together because now it's fun. Now it's enjoyable. Now they're doing something they love rather than have to. Again, these sort of different ways of looking at it.
Absolutely. And, for the children, this frees them from, let's say, 20 years of being indoctrinated and controlled to learn something to fit into a society that's enslaving and no longer going to be there. So this frees the child and the guardians of the child, the parents, up to what the child wishes to learn, what are the interests in it. And it does that because the old schooling is not part of this new. They're not being programmed and conditioned into a monetary controlled society as well. And this is why it's so important that every child puts their voice, also adds it to GPMS. And even if they're 1 second old, because as I said earlier in the show, if the old governments can put a debt on them when they're 1 second old, this means they are at 1 second old, that they own all of the infrastructure with us upon the planet, and their voice is counted. So every voice is counted with this, and it's the full freedom, for the children going forward as well. What I wish to say, the figures on the website, what we have is approximately an equivalent to $12,000 US for every child, woman, and man for the inception, the first payment. And that is to put everyone in a place of comfort. So this goes above and beyond any ideas what the governments would throw at you with basic incomes and things in the past. So we go, and we had to go above and beyond that because we're placing humanity in a place of total freedom and comfort. So you don't just give them a little bit. It has to be enough. So what we do is we put the relative figure or approximate of 12,000 initially, get every child, woman, and man upon the planet in a full place of comfort, that they're in no lack. You give them the opportunity then, to breathe, and very quickly they heal themselves and transition to the new liberated, harmonious way in society. But then we go and say, approximately a month later, we give you $6,000 each. And one of the reasons why it drops so quickly is because there is the instant inflation or deflation that occurs upon inception. And deflation occurs because not only are you giving every child, woman, and man upon the planet $12,000, at the same time you are propping up fully funded all of the essential goods and services upon the planet. And during the course of doing that, where they are being funded, they do not need to have payrolls like before and wages, and they do not have the overhead to operate. So what this does, it begins to cause rapid deflation. And this is why it happens this quick. That is why within a month it drops, that you are still living in a luxury beyond anything you really had before for the most of humanity, the 90%. And you do not, it does not cost, your cost of living has decreased dramatically, perhaps by 90%. So you're not going to need all of this money. You no longer need to save for your future because this is unlimited constant funding that keeps you going forward to as long as you need to. But very quickly, remember, you're going to be transitioning out of needing money at all. When the new technology is being delivered to the planet, you're going to find that you don't have a use for money. But this is how quick it occurs.
Has anybody got any questions?
Yep. You said, Lee, before that we didn't have much time. What did you mean with that?
Well,
perhaps
go on, Rick.
Go ahead, Lee.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just going to say what I can see outside. I mean, I don't need to talk about it on much of a higher level. I'm sure Rick will do that for us. But if we look outside, a decision's got to be made very shortly whether we accept what's going on or we don't. As this progresses, where's the future for the ones that don't know anything about GPMS at the moment? What are they protesting for? And there's more and more doing it. So there's an urgent need in humanity for a solution. So this is leading to me to believe that there isn't much time in linear time before something has to give. And it's where that aspect is. But I'm going to let Rick elaborate on that on a higher level.
Oh, thank you. But on the same level, we're all on it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's my feed. Is it fluent or it's not glitchy? Is it?
It's fine.
No, it's fine.
Okay. So, what's occurring? All trust and credibility at this point has been eradicated in the existing administrating governments around the planet. So it's not going to, there is no trust left, and these will not be any governing bodies in the near future. So when all trust and support is gone, which is what's occurring, indicated by your hundreds of millions or billion in the streets, it shows you that there is not much time left for humanity also to make this most liberated choice. So in the physical realm, your indicators are totally there to show that humanity doesn't have time, meaning that it's being forced to make the decision and the choice.
Thank you.
Yeah. I could go into it in more depth, but there's no reason to. It's just this. I've got a feeling. Well, I had it for 2 weeks, but when you see everything that's collapsing, when you see everything that's imploding, there's nowhere for the old system to go. So there's little point arguing with the old system. So it's now about unity. So it's this force, this divine bringing together, which is what's occurring right now. So I mean, humanity's got as long as they want to make a choice, but they haven't got long left of this before something may be offered or something, whatever. It's not. I know which way it's going to go. I know which way I believe it's going to go. So there's not long left before that happens, is what I would say.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So it's something about, obviously, we're stepping out of an old way of thinking. Some people call it the matrix, an illusion of a life that we were all conditioned into. So my question is, thinking about the long calendar and the various stages that humanity has been in various cultures over millennia on the planet, is GPMS a model of a society pre any corruption, or is it the almost human 2.3 or 3.0, in that it's such a a kind of seismic step change. It's almost like we are in another dimensional reality, and there are off-planet kind of societies that have this kind of humane abundance, purity that we as human beings have never experienced before.
I'm going to jump in there and say both, kind of. I'm going to state openly that the long calendar and what we think is history may not be exactly anywhere near. And logically, prior to any of this imposition of these control structures, would it not be prudent to assume that humanity was working or were working in a sovereign state? When we look back at the tens of thousands of buildings all around this plain that look like cathedrals and churches and these sort of things, and the extent of those buildings, was money a problem then? Were they limited by their funding and by their government structures, and did they have a bad workforce and resources weren't available and all of these things? So were they funded by a rich man, or was it benevolent? These kind of ideas come up, and you start to look back through his story and you start to think, this doesn't go back as far as we think, because there's no way that we would have done all of that unless we were working together, united, with no lack, no resource lack, and no money problems. So there was a time prior that all this stuff got built, and we're told it's this, that, and then the other, but I don't, you can look at it however you will. So I would suggest that there was a perfectly harmonic time that was. I couldn't stipulate exactly when, and it got turned to what is. You could look at that as Kachi and Satya Yugas, if you want to look at calendars and long, it doesn't really matter. And now we're going to go back to we're at this point, and now we can look at it forward. Does it align with a higher level of consciousness, opening everything up, becoming sovereign, equal, your own authority, and all of these things? Does that align to a higher experience? Yes. Does it have to align to anything that was before? No. That's just fun to have a little think about. So it's inevitable, though, that humanity 2 or 1.0 goes to 2.0 goes to 3.0. So we can look at it from so many different aspects, Amina. And I would say yes, and probably no. It doesn't really make any difference what happened or was. But the fact is, it's the most benevolent, harmonic, divine, however you want to see it, movement of humanity to unite, to choose to become a higher consciousness environment.
Indeed, yes. It's the greatest opportunity, really, that humanity has ever had. And indeed, we are in the unprecedented times where you are having the evolution, if you will, if you look at history as a baseline, to the super consciousness. Humanity is evolving into the super consciousness. So again, it is the greatest opportunity to advance humanity as a species forward, also by doing the GPMS and by being a part of it. If you look at humanity right now, you consider them stagnant, and they were suppressed, and they were controlled, and they were also held back. But no longer is that the case, and it cannot be held back, as indicated and evidenced in the Great Awakening. So nothing stops this. And what I wish to say a lot of time in the teachings is, and as Lee said, it doesn't matter what history is. Look what your choice you have now and to go forward to. And with this, do not accept if anyone tells you that history repeats, because it does not, and we're proving that right now.
There's some interesting stuff about that, Amina, but I don't want to put it in here because it just creates too much. There's too many ways to look at what could have been and what was. Let's just look at what is. But I do enjoy the philosophical debate around it all, but we can't pin it down as factual. This is factual, what's happening right now.
So we keep it simple, yes, and keep our focus on it. And for the sakes, intents, and purposes of, this this meeting we're having tonight, we wish to, again, proliferate on the important points as we're doing, but also the important questions. So we keep it as simple for what GPMS is also the pair of simplicity. Humanity can live and enjoy a simple existence. They don't need the complexity. But you're ready to say something, Amina?
No, other to say thank you, because I completely understand, the points that you're making, and I suppose my reference back to the old pre-corrupted times is more an encouragement that humanity has experienced this kind of much more enlightened state before, so it gives people more of a sense of possibility. But Rick, in answering about this unprecedented time, because I think that's part of my question, it is an unprecedented time that we're living in, to really take that next shift into a higher state of awareness and of being, of creativity as in the planet. So that completely answers my question. I think the other thing that has occurred to me in this meeting is that there's a certain resistance at the beginning, and because it's the term early adopters, people who are like creating that path. But there will, as you say, there will be that point where people don't need to go through this iterative process of understanding it. They're just going to get it because there will be enough of a wave. And I think that has clicked for me more tonight as a result of this meeting, that the people following will just instantly get it.
Wonderful, and thank you. And what I would say about that unprecedented is that's a great way of looking at it. And we've utilized this quite a lot. People say unprecedented time, and I'm not saying you, Amina, but just in general for anybody out there. And when we come up against, we're trying to explain it or introduce GPMS, and then somebody brings up a precedent. Well, that can't happen because we tried it then. Remember that it's unprecedented. No precedent exists for this. So what does not exist as a precedent. This is unprecedented. Again, so there's nothing. We couldn't do it because of that. No, this isn't the time for that. It's unprecedented. So again, you can just expand past it and not even get involved in the minutiae or the complexity of bringing precedent in or experience. I tried that before, it didn't work. We'll try it again now because this is unprecedented. That's kind of just using those words. Thank you, Amina.
Yeah, exactly. I will, Amina, just jump back in history, and we'll use Bahrain. It's the perfect example of what Lee was saying, how things got built without money. And it's also a perfect example of what you're asking. In Bahrain, they did not have money until 1972. Yet, they thrived, had everything that they needed, to exist in at least harmony, and had all of the food. But what occurred after in 1972, then they got kind of infiltrated with the money. But at this time, let's look at, even though, let's say in 1970, they had everything they needed to exist, they were still perhaps without a lot of the New World technology. But during the course between then and now, they are familiar with the new technology also for the unprecedented time. So they also have been prepared. But a perfect example of how, you didn't need money. And we know there is existing communities today that they have their barter exchange systems, and, it works great within these little communities. But again, yes, unprecedented times.
Can I ask a question, guys? Well, it's not really a question for myself because I obviously very understand it. But obviously a lot of people are struggling with this. The whole Jazara Nazara. Can you still give your whole perspective on this for the listeners out there that are struggling to see the difference?
See the difference between Jazara and Nizara? Okay, Jazara and Nizara talk to a debt wipe. Debts don't exist. Jazara talk to keeping the central bank systems as they are. The central bank systems are independently owned by independent people. They are for profit against everybody. They're not benevolent. So it keeps that structure in place, owned by the same people. It says that we'll give you a UBI, a universal basic income. Not one soul on this planet is worth basic. Everybody is worth a lot more than that. It keeps disparity. It keeps the wealth gaps. It just says we'll give you a little bit to shut you up for a little bit of time. Oh, by the way, we did a few things wrong, but let us off and we'll throw you some bones from the table. That may sound a little bit harsh. It's been around in my mind, since 1952, the Jazara and Nizara ideas. They may have come in the 70s and would have been useful then. They are not now. It's a rehash of an old idea that everybody seems to have sat behind. And it's one of the only ones that's gone around all of the alt media and all of the everywhere. Jazara and Nizara, that's going to come and save you guys, and yet nothing. So it's a carrot on a stick being dangled by the same control structure trying to maintain itself while satisfying the crowds, the baying crowds, with a little bit of a handout so they can take it straight back over and loop it back in again whenever they wish. It doesn't change anything. It just satisfies a little bit of anger with the system at the moment for the short term. It's a short-term remedy that keeps the same control systems in place, government structures in place, the same corporate structures in place. It doesn't deal with anything else apart from some little money to keep some people happy to shut them up. That's my really biased opinion.
Yeah, and what I'll add with this, with the Jazara and Nizara and also the QFS concept is they put in their, gold-backed currency. Well, the moment that they put an asset other than the self on the currency, you enter the control once again. And, very simply with that, who controls the gold will dictate the value of the currency, will dictate how their economy would go, how society will go. So again, the GPMS severs all of that old power control because they are in receipt of most of the gold and silver. So again, the only way to take out that power control is for all of the people to activate the intrinsic value of themselves, and at the same time, it devalues all of their gold as a monetary exchange. So gold then will just be like jewelry or silver or what have you. It'll be a keepsake, and it doesn't control any of humanity because of the ownership who has it. See, if humanity doesn't take ownership of the entire infrastructure upon the planet, then it means they don't take ownership of the gold. But the gold is in the hands of the bad guys, is where it's at. And it's a limited, finite resource, once again, that limits, suppresses, controls humanity. Now, with the QFS concept, they like to put it like that it's coming, that you need certain things to occur. But again, they keep putting that in front of your nose. But two things with it. Again, it's based, some say, on a gold-backed currency. Again, you're restricting it. Another thing, they say the QFS cannot be hacked. But when you look at that, there is fear into that QFS concept where they say, oh, we got to do it this way, that it takes this long, so it's not hacked. It is a lesser fear construct. With the GPMS, you don't need to put any security features in there because humanity just does not require them. There is no thieves, no security features that needs to be in. So this is also why with the QFS and the Jazara and Nizara, they were instrumental trajectories for a while to orient ones, get them going in the right direction, but they're no longer required, and humanity does not have to settle for these inferior concepts. The full opportunity is here now, and it's the most logical choice that ones will take the full liberated comfort. So these, as we're seeing, also the Gesera concepts, every time they put a date on it and that date is not met, it is imploding it and destructing it and revealing it that it does not have the weight they say it has, and that it is also fictional, and that it is not part of the future. What you will see is all of those that were involved in it, as you're seeing, they've been, caught in a lot of deception because the darkness had infiltrated and fed misconceptions in there intentionally. But the beauty of it, all of these are awakened, to a beautiful degree. So now they just get aligned with GPMS, what it is, and they all begin to converge as well. At this point, you have other goodwill ventures. Let's look at like some of the prosperity funds, but this is the same sort of a thing. You look at Kim Gauguin, a creator that is the only one that has the access codes to money, which is an absolute fiction also on her part. She has codes, but it takes the unity altogether. So even her ventures, she's doing amazing work to my knowledge, but it needs to be transitioned and converged into the simplicity. On her bottom end, what Kim is doing with assemblies and what have you, once again, it's complicating and restricting the structure. And that's not compatible with harmony. The more complication you make, the more chaos you make, which is disharmony. So it is not resonant with the future also going forward, meaning that it has to rapidly transition and converge in, or it also, what she is doing, will also go to the wayside. And again, there is no competition. There is no contest with what GPMS is. It is the all-inclusive ultimate solution that is at the fingertips of humanity right now, where they only need to make a choice. And that's how simple it is.
A lot of the other things, not Nizara Jizara, but a lot of the other instruments are all breakaways. They don't tackle the whole. They don't see humanity coming together, uniting and taking own guardianship and stewardship of their own systems. So they work in breakaway systems where they fund this and fund that and fund the other, and leave the rest to transition over a long period of time. There is no long period of transition here. We can see that the old is gone. So there is now an urgency required to create the new. Now, do we do it in breakaways and leave 99% or 96% of humanity to just survive for a bit while we build this bit? And when they're, or just do it all in one go? And that's where these other instruments are working. They're brilliant. They're awesome. They're coming up with all sorts of different things, but they just come round and start talking to each other, and the nuts and bolts come together. So it's very, very close with this. One other thing about Nizar National is there's this proportion to go back to the Constitution. I'm not knocking the American Constitution. I'm not knocking the Magna Carta, but the Magna Carta means nothing, and nor does the Constitution, because they got undermined. They got undermined to the point where they don't exist for us. We haven't got any rights. It's all legal structures. So these things were great, but were proven to be manipulable. So there's no point going back to something that was manipulable. So we take it past the point where it's manipulable. And that's what GPMS has looked to do with everything. Take everything to the point where it's non-manipulable and then fill in the gaps. So this is where the choices are. And Nizara, Jizara, RVs, GCRs, and all of these things, they're plastering over a crack in the road. They are not doing anything more than that. They're satisfying a need for the people that haven't got a bigger picture yet, haven't come to unity, to keep them happy for a couple of minutes. And yet today they haven't even transpired, and yet still people are waiting for them. So all it needs is them to take a vote. They can still wait for Jazara and Nizara. Just take a vote, GPMS. Wait for Jazara to come up, and it won't. But the more that do that vote, the quicker GPMS gets to inception. And then Jazara and Nizara is an old thing that goes in the bin with commerce, economics, wealth, work, and these ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed.
I've got another question obviously for the collective of people that are watching. Can you put some perspective on the word lack? As many people sort of in that space of not deserving of this.
Well, that's empowerment, that's self-empowerment. This is where the indoctrination works, where this is just how it is. This is just life. You're born, you're taxed, you die. You go to work all day, you go to school, and you just got to, you know, if you're lucky, you can go on holiday once a year. And that's just what we're worth. Is it? Or is that what we've been told? Again, is it something that we believe because we've been told it by the same people who told us all of history and all of these things that are turning out to be false? As we see things that are more false, what we've got to do is empower ourselves. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. Who do I believe now? And it's that self-empowerment. And what am I worth? Am I worth nothing? Because that's what they've told me. Everything else has been a lie. So if they've told me I'm worth nothing, then I must be worth everything. Start to believe it. Start to be worthy of it, because you are. Everybody is. Everybody's equal and of equal worth, and that worth is infinite, not what we've been told. So as soon as we can self-empower that, take that in, see all the lies and the obfuscation. If they've lied about this, what else have they lied about? My worth? What do I believe I'm worth? Or do I need to go out and do this for slaves? No, whatever. There's so many different ways of looking at this. But the empowerment of the self. Can I stand up in my own power, in my own sovereignty, above authority? Do I need somebody to tell me what to do, or do I choose? And do I choose what I'm worth or what they told me I'm worth? These kind of concepts and these kind of questions start to empower yourself. Am I more than I've been told, or more than I think, etc., etc.? And this growth comes though, so it's not for everybody at that point to get to that full knowing of all of this. But what it will do is transition very quickly. As the society and the environment's changed and the pressures are all gone, then you realize your worth, because now you're not being abused every day in a toxic, abusive relationship with society, which is the way it is. I know that sounds a little bit heavy, but we could cotton wool it a little bit and say it's not as bad as you think, but it is. So again, this empowerment, this self-empowerment, this self-belief. Am I worth this? Oh, well, if my parents didn't have it, and that's precedent. You're citing precedent. This is unprecedented. What do we deserve as a collective? Everybody together equally. Nothing or everything.
Exactly. So you have the choice now, what GPMS gives you, to accept lack and stay in that state, or accept prosperity and abundance and freedom, and join with those and create that voice and get it done. So again, it becomes a no contest to the choice ones are going to make. If they want to stay in lack, they can prolong things, but the quicker they add their voice there, the quicker that they are in abundance. So again, it becomes just so logical and so sensical. Just make the choice. Do you want to accept lack and continue with that misery, or do you want abundance and freedom and harmony and all of the good things? Have you not experienced enough of the BS in the old, when you have this most glorious opportunity right on your doorstep, and it's not an illusion, it's not fiction, for everyone knows that a majority in anything in the past dictates what occurs with the planet. In this case, the majority wants this free, liberated, comfortable world, so nothing can stop it. The strength is in the numbers. However, it takes however long it takes to get these numbers. Every second someone hesitates, it's prolonging this inevitable. So the most common sense choice is just choose this. And we've given them everything so simply. they don't need to be so quizzical. They were not so quizzical or inquisitive with their governments. You know, they accepted everything with it. But here is a thing that is different. It's not the governments doing this. It is the people gathering the voice that is like them. So it's compatible, and it's also GPMS has everything what the people would want. Again, just look at it. The comparison chart is the great place for anyone to look at with this. I'd like to leave and Dean, just to touch a little bit on international law, because we kind of got going down there and then we got a little bit off from the law aspect again.
International, what do you mean, my friend?
Well, to keep it simple, you know, perhaps some believe that there is an international law where governments all must abide by as well. But in which there was, you know, it's written and they're told that there is the international law. However, the point that I need to make in this, and the Human Declaration of Rights as well is part of this, supposed to be.
Yeah, but the human rights were taken out when legalities were brought in. See, there's this is the common law. There's the commercial codes. We got to mix them up because the human rights were removed and commercial rights were put in. So corporate rights came in. So commercial codes came in, and human personas were created as corporate entities. So we fell from being sovereign individuals to a corporate employee in legality. So this is where the obfuscation of truth is. So you have no rights as a business. And your fiction, your name, the surname, etc., is a business. It's a corporate name that they trade. So the birth certification fraud gives a corporate name, which is a dead fiction. And you think that you're that persona, and you're not. This persona is a business, and now you're dealing with businesses. So the government is a corporation, it's a business, and you're a business. You're paying tax to trade in that jurisdiction. You're no longer a man of the land. You're no longer you've no rights, no human rights. You can try to push them, but the corporations, who owns the courts? Who owns the international courts? Who owns all of these? The corporations. So they're just businesses penalizing businesses under corporate law. This is all an obfuscation. It's all just banal. It's just inhumane. So as people start to recognize this, you know, there's so much information on this. You find a lot of it. The dog Latin that's been used, the Black's Law, the inversion of words, etc., business to business. So really, human rights don't exist. There's lip service paid to them, and that's it. Most people that have been to court know that there's no rights in there. You just get treated as you do, and they treat it as a business to business. And this is why fines are important. You know, fines. And you find businesses, they pay penalties because of lost profit and loss. Yet you're finding an individual who's got no profit and loss into another corporate. So it's just revenue. This is just revenue and suppression and oppression, whilst the large corporations profit and everybody else doesn't. So as people become more aware of this, then this is what I say about constitutional laws and these common laws and these other little bits. They were manipulated and removed. They were able to loop into something that was less and be deceitful with it. We're going to choose to take something that is now truth and transparency, full of truth and transparency, so that nobody has to question or argue. That trust then can come back because we know it's true and transparent. Everything we've lived with is lies and deceit. So again, I'm not going to go too deep into the international laws, commercial codes and admiralties and all the rest of this at this moment, Rick, but if you want to, crack on. But there is very little to no human rights left. And none of the governments signed up to a charter because they're all corporate structures. They're all businesses owned by another business. And as much as people don't like to hear that, they think the government's theirs. It's not. It's that profit from you. They gain revenue through all of their arms, and the court systems and the legal systems are just one of those revenue gains for them to create more funding, to create debt. It's just the whole thing's loops and loops and loops. And what we're going to choose to do is to take above that, to say no more. We recognise what you've done with that, and that's why I call them abusers of the system. Nothing more. I'm not going to use other words. They were malevolent abusers of the system. Why not? They built the majority of it, so they could be abused. So it could be abused. And as we see this, then we can see where the old became manipulated and the new won't be. Again, levels and levels and levels of consciousness and levels of choice. As you see things fail, then you can see GPMS has the purity. As you see another thing fail, GPMS has the purity, etc., etc. So old versus new works on so many different levels with this model.
Thank you. What I wish to say is any of the constitutions and international law, it is all null and void. And just to make it simple for everyone, those that were supposed to enforce the Geneva Convention, the Nuremberg Code, international law, the Human Declaration of Rights even. If you look at these old instruments, those that were supposed to enforce it in times of tyranny and attempted genocide are the governments themselves. And where they have not done it, this just nullified for even the most simple one in understanding law at all. It is just has all been nullified. And in the circumstance where it has been, in the least, more blatantly 2 years ago, what it does, it invalidates all of their lawful structure, and in the course of that, it instantly enacts the divine law as the superior law, which is the law, natural law of the people. So this is the reality, and this is what GPMS is. It has those basic fundamentals of what law is. So I just wish to say all of the constitutions, they are not worth the paper they're written on. And what is occurring is that there'll be a worldwide simple accord, again, using your beautiful word, Lee, and agreement. Really, you don't need law written. Everyone has it within them. It's within your morals and your ethics, and it is what you are. Everyone knows, what to do as well. So this is happening, and yes, it's being all torn down. Just a quick comment with any that might have been into the birth bonds. Listen, just let that all go. It's money. It's their money that they created off of you to play with. You're never going to get it because it's their money. So don't waste time on that as well. And just join to create the new money where you have everything you ever needed and more. So it's perfect logic and perfect sense. Don't waste time on those old things. Just unite.
That answer that, Dean? Ish?
That's perfect, mate. I've got another one for you guys. Just people out there that are watching. The saviour complex. Perspective on that.
That's on loads of different levels. This is, I'm going to give my perspective purely. That's all. Not fixed to anything, but my perspective purely is at this point there's this sovereignty, this worth, how much are you worth? How much strength have you got? Your power. A lot of this has been taken away from humanity on many, many different indoctrination levels. It seems to me at this time that what it's going to take is now unity. The human collective uniting together and standing up together. And this is where, what was the word? What was your word? What was the question?
Saviour complex.
Saviour. So this is where that saviour complex comes in. And I'm aware of, there won't be an external saviour in my mind. for the collective. So where people are waiting for one or two solutions to come in, they won't work because there's no unity with that. They're waiting for somebody to do something for you. So everything's wrong, but somebody's going to do something for me to help me and fix me. This doesn't seem to be the way that this is all going. So all of the promises that this is going to happen and that's going to happen, the military's going to come in, Mr. Trump's going to do this, that, and the other, doesn't seem likely to me. What seems is that the savior complex is there to say there will not be a savior. You are your own savior. So this is where it seems to me very prudent that it's up to each and every one of us to stand up in our own power and say, no, I'm going to save myself. I'm not going to wait for that or this or that to land or this to do that before I do something. And unite with whoever, find something to do to say, we're not having that anymore. We recognize this is no good. We're going to choose a different way. And I'm going to choose this from a position of power with my brothers and sisters. And that's that unity. So there's no savior coming in, no outside savior per se that was going to be, let's say, noticeable. It's going to be a collective choice to unite. And we bring ourselves out of this. We've allowed it. We've chosen it. So we're going to choose it out, if you like.
With that, if I may, Lee, can you elaborate, if it resonates, a bit about also the sovereignty decrees, which is important what we have with GPMS, because they are also stating that degree of autonomy and freedom as well. So it does play a role when anyone agrees with that too. And with the savior complex, you know, one thing within the psychological area, they'll say that one of their definitions is with an individual that tries to save everyone as well. Well, what I need to say is they label it as a disease to prevent anyone doing this. And as we know, it takes all of the humanitarians coming together to do everything with this. But I just wanted to put that little flair on their definitions as well. And don't, the savior complex in the definition I just gave, just don't let anyone tell you that that if they're trying to propagate a mental capacity thing upon you. That's what I suggest.
Yeah, that's the same flip as conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
I've got a good idea it'll help all of humanity. Oh, you got savior complex. You need to go and see a psych ward. Yeah, okay. So to elaborate on what you was talking about, Rick, on the sovereignty level, GPMS has got 2 decrees up. I will read them out quickly. The GPMS decree of sovereignty on the individual level is that everybody that agrees to, consents to, or votes for GPMS aligns with these higher divine laws. And what they simply stipulate is that they choose to have unlimited rights and freedoms to right of moral and ethical choice of self-determination, the right of complete comfort and abundance, the right to liberty, the freedom to love and harmony, the freedom of speech, the freedom of unity, freedom of experience, freedom of expression, freedom of belief, and the right of sustenance, and freedom of movement upon earth, travel, earth, space, and time, freedom of movement and travel upon earth, space, and time. There's also a decree for a bigger sort of paragraphs. Every man, woman, and child is born and is by nature free, equal, sovereign, and possesses the inherent knowing of what is morally and ethically right. By definition, no one can ever be in a position of authority above another. I am choosing and I am energizing my I am highest moral principles. I am fully supporting the evolving divine plan contained within the GPMS, Global People's Monetary System, and Simplified law. Through my I am consent given below, I am activating my infinite intrinsic value and right to create in unison with others an infinite money supply that is used as a tool to provide instant comfort and abundance for all of humanity. I am activating to the fullest my creator absolute unalienable rights and freedoms upon the earth as well as in all space and time. So this is the divine simplified law that GPMS is putting as an outline. We could put loads more complexity in there. But again, We don't need to, because that states everything that we actually need. Would you like me to go into anything else with that?
Oh, no, you did well. You did perfect with that. Yeah, so it's the unalienable rights. It's the intrinsic rights that every, child is born with. So it's important. I wish to expand a little bit on the importance of the freedom of movement upon the planet, because what's going to occur is all borders are going to come down very shortly as well, because you are no longer going to have the segregation and the separation by countries. You're having the worldwide community with this. And also with this, as the borders come down, you don't need passports and these sort of things to travel, and it'll be a natural migration. And this aspect becomes important because there will be volunteers, wanting to go to assist in Africa with building, growing food. You're also going to have a little bit more of disbursement upon the planet, and the North, Russia and Canada and the Northern Hemisphere, there's lots of, let's say, land now that was uninhabitable before, which is now habitable as well. So you're going to see more of not a compressed density in areas. This is going to open up things, but this also comes during the course. The reason I brought this up is because what I'm fully feeling right now, Lee and everyone listening, that even before the monetary inception of GPMS, that this is going to occur, and it already has, because the authority of any, let's say, custom officers and what have you, they are also right at this point in violation of unalienable rights by preventing anyone coming into or leaving any country, and also the checks and all of these things. So that is a big, huge thing you will see on the platter in the upcoming, I'd say, days or weeks, where that is all being dismantled as well. And what you're going to be seeing is you will see border crossings that will just be open. You will not see any workers at these areas as well. For again, if they do, they are violating very serious laws, which I don't wish to get too deep into. But you'll see this as well.
Another thing I'll add to this as well is the amount of corporate land that's owned. Who owns the land? But we're told that certain factions do, and this is all corporate owned. So government land, for instance, is that government's, or is that the people's? Church lands and all of these things that maybe have been an awful lot of this area of the world that's owned by somebody else and is not allowed, people aren't allowed to habit this. Perfect farmlands and all of these things that can be utilized for so much more. So all of a sudden, again, a lot more land opens up as people start to be able to, and people are going to go here, and people can go wherever they want. And this is the beauty of it. There's no pressure now. Wherever you go, you've got money. You don't have to find a job. You just go for something. So it's, like Rick said, natural organic migration and disbursement as people choose without force. And they do it because they want to. And this is where it changes. So you're not having to do these things. You choose to do these things, to experience this without any pressure. So people say there's not enough resources. Well, Rick's elaborated there's 10 times as much as we need. You lift all that scarcity up, and now you've got a load more land too, because the corporate structures that stole all this is now, we've taken it back, if you like. The structures being guarded, guardianed and stewarded by humanity benevolently for everybody. Nobody's in poverty. Nobody's worried about money or jobs. They're just doing what they enjoy, going wherever they want. And there's enough land and there's enough resources to do this with a load more. If the population was double, there'd still be plenty. But we're, again, so a lot of the fears that come in from this, well, I'm patriotic. That's another word that's been thrown in by government. But these fears that are coming in about there won't be enough. There's more than enough. And there's more than enough land, and there's more than enough everything.
Indeed. And with that, in actuality, there is no lawful contract for any ownership of land. And the reason for that, the land is part of Gaia, and Gaia did not give a contract or a receipt to anyone saying, yes, you own a piece of me. It's to be shared worldwide, so no one can do this. What they did in the past was stake a claim of ownership like the Crown did. However, again, remember the Crown really was only represented by one or two. Again, when you have the majority, we say, no, it belongs to everyone upon the planet equally. So with that, the governmental lands, the huge property, I believe the Catholic Church is perhaps in the past the second most biggest, if not the first owner of property worldwide. So all of this will be shared as well. So, and they cannot say that they own it. And I just said why. There is no, there just is no real validation that they can. And again, when it's not accepted by the people, the majority of the people, it cannot be. Now, you have respect and common courtesy within the people so that you don't have a lot of land conflict, if you will. And so it works out itself. We don't need to be a part of this. We just know that, yes, everyone has the right on the land. And let's say if someone has a property, they want their privacy. Well, good-hearted people just say, good, I won't go on their small property. But you don't have someone hogging acres and acres and miles of land that they don't need. And it's so important, all of the pristineness of Gaia, of the planet, to protect and restore as well. And, a big part of this, what you're going to have is, upon the inception of GPMS, you're going to have a lot planting trees and doing all of this restoration projects as well, which are fully funded. So each one don't need to get paid by any employer any longer, and there is no payroll, there is no wages. They just activate the funding that they need to keep going as society transitions. Now, the reason why you need the money, why we flip the tables and are still using the money as a tool, is because you need to transition the old society, the old legitimate wealth into the new. So, for example, to not discriminate against any legitimate business, if they got old inventory and stock, that does have a value for them. So it is rightfully theirs if lawfully, and it does have a value. So they will sell that product, but at the same time, the consumer, the buyer of it, is you that has got the free money. So you're creating the exchange, but also we're harmonizing all of the existing way that money was changed into the transitional one people's money way with this, if I explain that.
Yeah. And GPMS does not say it doesn't disrupt the old currency. It says like for like if you want to bring it across to the GPMS currency, and that's up for debate as to what it's going to be called, because when we get enough of humanity, then we choose a name. So nothing's fixed. So everything's allowed to organically grow within this. I was going down a point and I've completely forgotten where I was going, my friend. Sorry, my apologies.
Well, yeah, well, no, not at all. Well, the main thing is about all of the good people in the world creating the voice as well. And our focus is to eradicate all of the poverty and all of the lack. But we're not, by no way does anyone say what you got to believe, what your beliefs are. We're just coming together for this one common goal that all of humanity wants. So if they got beliefs and, if they wish to, whatever they wish to do, that is their choice. We don't discriminate, and their lawful wealth is honored, if you will, into the system. But what they're going to define with that, as Lee said previously, perhaps not tonight, but they're going to find they don't need the wealth because they are in a constant state of wealth as well.
That's what I was trying to say. We're not taking anything. The GPMS does not take anything off what you've got. Transfer it in or use it. It's nothing. It's not separating that in the slightest. And one of the things that's been interesting is people coming up with the darker aspects of human nature. And all I've asked is everybody that brings these points to me, these questions to me. Well, what about the greedy ones? What about the ones that's going to hoard land and they fly around the earth 3 or 4 times? How many of them are there? What do you want to do? Is that what you want to do? If you got abundance, is that what you want to do? Hoard it, lord it above others? Is that what or do you want enough happily to do what you want when you want with no pressure and stress? So if you want that, do you not think the large percentage want that? So when we do think about the complexity and think about the negatives, the little speed bumps that may come up inevitably, they're so minor and so trivial compared to the benefit to the whole that they shouldn't really stop. Well, they do, I know, but they shouldn't really affect the decision. But I get where they come from, but just see the benefit as opposed to the negative, and how quickly they would be surpassed. These old models of darker aspects of humanity would be surpassed so quickly as humanity accelerates and thrives.
Exactly, and if someone wants to take these trips, don't worry about what someone else is doing. Look at yourself. What do you want to do? Do you want to be busy all day watching what the others are doing and saying, why are they doing that? It's ridiculous, and it doesn't even occur because you see yourself, you have the same ability to do whatever you wish to do. You're free, so you don't need to complain or judge another in this reality. You have your beautiful prized package of comfort, freedom, prosperity, and you're going to be fully having fun with it. And these other things, yeah, perhaps you may be doing it yourself. There is the small conditions that we need to put upon the GPMS, as we need to keep some order. And that's why let's say the relative $12,000 figure upon inception is in there, but it's also why we attached, there has to be a certain amount of hours that needs to be contributed to enjoy this, because you need to have this condition. If you didn't put any of it on, you're going to have chaos because everyone's just going to be on a party. So to keep a little bit of order, you got to put a condition. Okay, come on, all you guys and girls, you got to at least work, let's say, 10 hours or 40 hours the first month to contribute to society. And that's your only obligation with that. As we advance quickly out of, you'll see you don't need money at all, and you liberate yourself even more. So it's there was something I thought about.
There's a couple of things I've dropped. I've dropped the frequency as well, but it doesn't matter. I think we've said quite a bit about these things, and we're starting to reiterate now. So is there any more questions?
Yeah, I've got another question for the collective. Complexity, the problem, and like the complexity of their thoughts and the way they think. Can you give a perspective on the word on just that complexity and why people are putting themselves into that space?
We can give huge examples of this, but we've just spent sort of 2 hours simplifying all of this. The complexity is in there, not in reality. And it's basically from something to blame and fear. There's loads of different aspects on why people think about complexity or think the negative. One of the simplest options I look at with this is we're all used to being in a prison cell, and we've all been taught better the devil you know, and we all fear change to a certain degree. Have done some, moved past that, some still in there. So we know the prison cell, and we know how to survive in this every day because we've been abused in it for so long. What's outside the prison walls is kind of like dangerous because we don't know. Of course, it's heaven, and the prison cell is not where we want to be. And so we create all this complexity as to why we can't leave the prison cell. But in reality, none of that exists. You just walk out. The doors are wide open. The choice is there, and outside there is pure abundance and harmony and freedom. And yet we sit in here because we've been taught to. And this is that survival mechanism we've been indoctrinated to believe, where we aren't worthy and all these things come in. So we create complexity. I need to know this. And as Rick said a little bit earlier, when the government sends a little bit of a post through the mail at the door and says, you must fill this out, herds and red tape in it and bureaucracy and all this, that, and the other, sign here, send it off or you'll be fined. Poof, that goes without a thought. Yeah, freedom. No, we got to fear that because we don't know exactly how it's going to work. Just see that as it's just part of the ones that are going to create complexity at the moment will fall in when the numbers get bigger. The ones that can create complexity with an open mind can see through it with a bit of thought and discussion. Others won't. They'll just say, no, not yet, but they'll come in later. So I could give lots of different ideas on why complexity is coming in, but realistically, there is no need for it. It's unnecessary. And we've just spent a fair bit of time outlining how simple this is.
Absolutely. And having said that, so I believe, Lee, the best thing what to do is we've been recording this. We'll need to put it into perhaps a YouTube where the closed captioning works, where we can distribute this into the other groups and they can get it in their own language where it can be translated through the closed captioning.
Should we stop the recording then? We finished. Should we? Is there any more relevant questions, or should we stop the recording?
I wish. Just before we stop, what I wish to say for everyone is, in your heart, you know this is inevitable. Don't expect putting a time limit on it. We know we're very close, and the main focus is just keep getting the word out to those that are open to it. And just keep being the beacons. Don't go expending your energy into areas where it's rejected, because that's a definite divine sign. Don't waste your time there. Just keep being the light, getting it out, getting the message plastered all over the world, wherever you can do it without expectation. And as they're ready, they will come into alignment, they will see it, and they will come. So we just keep putting it out as the beacons of light, and they become attracted to it. And without a doubt, we know that this is occurring and that this is inevitable. So just keep that in there. Keep your focus. Don't stress so much. Just work when you feel to put things out. And, some of us were anxious and anticipating it. We tirelessly put it out, but that's what we're doing. We're following our guidance. You follow your guidance and do it in your way. We are all a community and a group. And as Lee said, there is no hierarchy here. We're all guardians on this selfless journey for humanity. So there's no pressure, no peer pressure, if you will. So we just share with all of this and take it forward and keep the focus going forward.
Very prudent what you just said. Take the stress away. This is fun.
Can I just say something? Rick, it was what you were saying about the freedom of travel. And I realised that that's going to be such a catalyst for this process, because the restriction on travel and the conditions on travel have become really unbearable for people. And as the trickery kind of manoeuvres the climate change agenda to even further restrict the movement of travel, and to make people feel guilty about the use of resources on the earth, I think that when that happens, that will provide such an open door for humanity to realise that freedom is possible. Because never in my lifetime have I ever really imagined that we could have a world without borders and checks. So when that happens, that's really going to be such a crystalline kind of way of people holding on to the idea that they are absolutely free.
Yeah. There's a lot more rights than travel has been trampled on. It's just that that's one that we quite kind of like to get away from all the other rights that have been trampled on here. And of course, you've got these climate change things that are going on. Again, you've got to ask I'm not going to state it openly, but you've got to ask the question, how many lies? How many lies do you believe before you start not to believe any of the things that come out of mainstream government? But yes, travel, all of these things will open up. But again, it's the unity. So yes, some of the borders will open up at this point because they can't be controlled anymore by the old authorities, because they have none. They have no authority. They've completely trampled their own legal structures. They can't do anything anymore. So the borders will open up in that way. But we're talking about inception of GPMS and really opening up. So there's transition through unity and then complete abundance. So it's an interesting time.
Excellent. So if there isn't any other questions, we'll stop the recording. No other GPMS pertinent questions?
Okay,
Good.
brother, I'm going to stop it now. I'm going to stop it now. Thank you all anyway, guys. And I just say thank you all of you all and all that sort of stuff at the end of this. I'm about to stop it.